coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's some money. Go see a Star War.
But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Welcome back to Long Walk Talks. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today, as always, by my two co-hosts, Stan Wilson Lee.
Sleepy.
Stan Sleepy Lee. And Chris Wilson Barnes.
I wish I were a 12-foot tall skeleton with LED eyes.
I also wish you were. And you could just live in my front yard. It's what you've always wanted. Today, we are going to be continuing our Quentin Tarantino Quarantino film discussion. Chris already doesn't have skin.
True that.
Today, we're going to be discussing Tarantino's... You say that again in case somebody missed it.
He said skin is a social construct.
Damn right it is. Our topic today is going to be Tarantino's fifth film, a controversial subject that I'm going to bring up later, the matter of it being his fifth film, Death Proof, originally released as part of a double feature called Grindhouse. So, you're doing great, Stan.
We are keeping it together.
We are.
Just sleepy.
A minute 15. We're doing great. How can you possibly not hear?
Well, he's got these two things jammed in his ear.
Now, Stan, so we were discussing the other day. Did you get a chance to see this in the theaters as it was intended?
I don't know. I don't remember. I was going to, it's like maybe that was like the where I ended up at the theater and Scott was there and he went and saw Death Proof 2. It's like, was it at the Carmike? Did I go see like a discount?
I don't know. Literally all the story that I know came from, well, I can't remember now at this point if it was you or our friend Scott who said, oh yeah, we went and saw that when it came out at, I don't know where you saw it.
Did I know you then?
No, that was 2007.
Yeah.
You guys didn't meet till 2008.
Right.
Thank you, historian Chris.
Well, I could have been really high. I don't know.
But we were discussing before we started rolling, you watched this by itself the other night. Have you actually seen the whole Grindhouse experience?
I know I've seen both films because I own both films.
Okay. So you've seen them separately.
And if I went to the theater to see Death Proof, was it released? It wasn't released here, so I only saw Death Proof if I went to the theater.
So you haven't even seen Planet Terror?
I have seen Planet Terror, because I own both of them.
I'm very confused right now. So you've seen the film separately, but you have not seen Grindhouse.
Objection, leading the witness.
Together, unless I saw your version of it, because I know I've seen the trailers, the fake trailers together.
This is the worst beginning to any podcast we have ever released. The problem here
is we only have Stan's memory to go off of.
It's true. Okay, so
I think I've seen the grind because I know I've seen it with the trailers.
All right, so we're gonna ask Chris the same question we always ask at the beginning of these episodes, and then I'm gonna break down the way that Grindhouse was released. So before I do that, Chris, let's start with what do you know about Grindhouse, and then what do you know specifically about Death Proof, Tarantino's portion of Grindhouse?
And we have to be clear that Grindhouse.
I'll explain that.
The grouping, not the genre.
Right.
Oh, I have not seen it. I know some basic summaries of it. Mm-hmm. Slightly more of the Tarantino part than the other part.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Okay. All right. So to clear up the confusion, in 2007, these films were released as part of what was supposed to be like a throwback 70s cinematic experience. So you weren't just showing up to watch the two movies. You were showing up to see old advertisements as well as fake trailers. So the presentation of Grindhouse starts off with the trailer for Machete. What are you looking at? What are you trying to show me right now? This
I have
isn't
the origin.
okay. All right. Again, this is an audio medium. So it starts off with the trailer for Machete, starring Danny Trejo, which eventually got actually made into a real movie.
Pretty
and it's
good one.
Fantastic if you haven't seen it. Then we're presented with Planet Terror, Robert Rodriguez's segment. And then we are shown the trailers for Werewolf Women of the SS, directed, I quote unquote, directed by Rob Zombie and featuring Nicolas Cage as Fu Manchu. Of all the other films in this, of these fake trailers, this is the one that I would most like to see actually get turned into a movie because it looks bloody ridiculous. So Werewolf Women of the SS is followed up by the trailer for Don't, directed by Edgar Wright. A trailer that just defies description. I recommend looking it up. You haven't seen these, have you, Stan?
I have seen them.
Okay.
And I'm thinking you had a showing of Grindhouse.
No.
And because I know I've seen this all together unless I went online or something, again, really stoned and watched the trailers
that
by
makes a lot of
themselves,
sense. But then the final trailer is for Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Directed by Eli Roth.
Yeah.
And after that, we are presented with Quentin Tarantino's fifth film, Death Proof. So what is presented in the whole feature of Grindhouse, as I'd say, is about an hour 15, hour 20 probably. It was released in Europe and then later on DVD and Blu-ray by itself in the full 2-hour cut of the film with a lot of the things that Tarantino cut out, which primarily were much, much longer dialogue sequences. So my first question to you, Stan, is which do you prefer? The director's cut, and I'm realizing now, considering all of the confusion that just abounded at the beginning of this, that you might not know.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Okay, all right. So which do you prefer, the director's cut standalone version or the Grindhouse edited version?
I would say that it should be seen as a whole. I didn't get the movies until I could get them together. So I owned both of them at the same time. You know, I picked them up because I knew that it's an experience as a whole, and supposed to be experienced as a whole. And the amount of time that Robert Rodriguez has involved in this it's a very pertinent amount of time for the grouping. He's very important, and he produces Tarantino's segment as well, you know. So it's like, so the idea that it's supposed to be experienced as a whole, whether or not I've seen it in its cut form for the two movies put together, but no, I just keep saying, because I've seen it where they do the trailer and then you see Machete, and then you see Planet Terror, and then you have the intermission with the dancing food and stuff, you know, and then you get the trailers for the other stuff, and then you go into Death Proof, and I know I've seen it in that order, but when I'm going back to I think it was Carmike, and it was the only time I could see Death Proof, and I think I ended up there, and Scott must have been there at the same time or just coming out in the movie. I don't know if I don't think I seen it with him, because like I said, I was really high.
We could always ask him, but I'd prefer to just leave this as a question for the ages.
Chances are I was really high, and I probably just did laundry or something. But
what makes that assumption better is the fact that Scott was a police officer.
Exactly.
You encountered
But he
him
was
and
off
running coming
duty.
out of exactly.
And you know, he was coming out of, you know, fucking Death Proof, so it's like it doesn't matter.
So together, you prefer?
I think it needs to be seen in its experiential form, and that's why I'm sure I had a great time seeing them together. But I do enjoy Death Proof in its uncut form. I do that.
Okay.
But no, I do think it should be experienced. If you're experiencing these two movies or experiencing this experience, you should experience it as a whole.
Please say experience some more.
Experience.
So
as a whole.
Are you experienced?
So when these were released, They came out in I think it was March of 2007. Grindhouse did, and then for whatever reason they were released separately when they came out on DVD and Blu-ray. So we got Planet Terror first, and then Death Proof, and I had them both separately. And at the time, I don't think there was any assumption that you would get the whole Grindhouse experience again, because this did not do well at the box office. It goes back to what we talked about before. This was like a 3.5 hour or just over 3 hour movie experience, and audiences weren't quite down for that yet in 2007. So I got them separately.
You had to wear them down for another decade.
Basically. And then eventually it was released on Blu-ray the way it was intended. And I think that's why I got rid of my single disc sets. I kind of wish that I had kept them so that I could watch the director's cut of Death Proof again, except for the fact that I distinctly remember not liking it. It was the version that's presented in Grindhouse, in my opinion, is already too long, too verbose. Like it is too much Tarantino-ness. He was too in love with his own words. So yeah, I agree with you. I prefer the version that's in Grindhouse to the director's cut. And I will say that when I saw this in the theater, I did this completely backwards. So I was in college when this came out, and my roommate's girlfriend worked at one of the big movie theaters here, and she could basically get us into any movie anytime. But for some reason, I think I had class or something, I couldn't get there at the start of it. So she got us in right as Death Proof was starting. So instead of doing the whole experience the way it was supposed to be done, me and my friend watched Death Proof, then stuck around, then started from the beginning with the Machete trailer, and then Planet Terror.
So was it released here as the Grindhouse?
Yeah. In America, yeah, it was released as...
I thought it was released in America as just the two pieces.
No, in Chris is
in
rubbing
Europe,
his
the
foot.
international version is the split.
Yeah, so Europe...
So that is how I saw it. Then I did see Planet Terror at Carmike as well, so they would have shown it, and I would have seen the whole thing. That's how I seen it. Okay.
Yes, the U.S. only... Theatrically, they got the Grindhouse package. Internationally, it was released as Grindhouse, but they were also released as separate films.
Right. Okay.
So you could go and just watch Planet Terror or go and just see Death Proof. And in fact, I have got I screenshotted an article that I was reading last night. This is from an interview between Tarantino and a lot of the cast at the Cannes Film Festival in 2007, where they premiered the director's cut of Death Proof. And they're talking to Kurt Russell, and he says, "I'm disappointed for any audience who walks into Grindhouse this April. There will be no movie made in the next 5 years for the Grindhouse audience like this one. They will be able to see Death Proof or Planet Terror as separate films, but my prediction is that 20 years from now, you will want, quote, the Grindhouse experience. You won't want to watch the films separately. You will see them separately now, and hopefully you'll enjoy them, but at the end of the day, if you want to have the full effect, the full experience is something bizarre. In that regard, I like the short version. I like how it is, and I'm interested to see the film in its long version and compare to see how it stands on its own." So that's straight from the man himself, Kurt Russell. And I've got some more quotes saved here that I'll...
One thing you don't get in the Grindhouse version that you get in the, let's call it the international version. I guess that would make it simpler for me, and the fact that I'm really sleepy. Is you don't, or tell me, because this is what I'm reading, and I can't remember. Like I said, I can't remember when I did see it theatrically. You don't get the lap dance in the Grindhouse version,
right? The lap dance.
That is what So it's like when I finally got the international versions. That must have like surprised the fuck out of me, and that's one of my favorite moments of the whole fucking movie. That
was one of the selling points when they released it by itself on DVD. Was this? It includes the missing reel with the lap dance, Chris. So the joke is that in both Planet Terror and in Death Proof, when people went and saw these low budget films in the 70s, they played the same reels over and over again. Sometimes they got fucked up. Sometimes reels just went missing. So you'd be watching a movie, and then all of a sudden you just get to a card that says missing reel.
Right, I'm aware of that conceit, yeah.
Yeah, so they do that with a major action sequence in Planet Terror. The action is building up to what should have been like the climactic set piece of the film, and the music swells, and then it cuts to missing reel. And then it cuts back, and like during this missing reel, all of the action happened. There was a big reveal about all the main characters. And it's hilarious. So they do the same thing in Death Proof, where there is all this buildup for one of the girls to give Kurt Russell's character, Stuntman Mike, a lap dance. And he has to coerce her into doing it. And then she agrees, and they finally get up to go into the bar, and then it cuts to missing reel. And then from there, it cuts to the aftermath. And so, yeah, when this came out, it was like, oh, my God, you get to see the lap dance now. Which, I know that I've seen that version. I can't tell you I missed it.
Because, see, my thing with the, you talked about the overabundance of verbiage.
Did you say overabundance?
The overabundance of verbiage, yeah.
Wow, I was hoping that went just straight over everything and else, and I'm not going to live it down.
What do you just not understand?
The overabundance of Tarantino language, right?
Yes.
I just think, my thing is that he finally had women to say it, and so he did not want to cheat them out of being able to
say his words.
Right. Well, the fact that he's finally having women say his words, which is very unusual.
And I have some quotes about that as well.
And I know they had fun saying it.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and just pull that up. And that's going to lead into our second part of the discussion, which is, does this film really work as a grindhouse film? But before we get into that, I can't think of anything more 2007 than what I'm about to read from this person doing the interview at Cannes. About the girls, this is a quote. About the girls, I had no idea they talked that way when they were among themselves, and especially not in a man's presence. How did you girls work your dialogue, and what made you allow him in? To which Tracy Toms replies, he listens to women. I can't figure out how he knows how we talk to each other when men aren't around. Rose McGowan says, we're not quite as precious as most people. And Tracy Toms says, we're not, and he just listens. He observes people. I read the script and thought, I have this conversation a lot. How'd he know? And we rehearsed the conversation a lot. And then strangely, Rosario Dawson says, Quentin definitely prides himself at being the lone guy when his girlfriends go out.
That just makes me think of just them just sitting in a group, and you just see over in the back corner just Quentin peering over like a divider.
Like dangling.
He put himself in the movie, so he didn't even need to do that.
He's dangling an incredibly obvious microphone just over their table. Okay, so
and to lead it, that's a great lead-in into whether it's a true grindhouse. Is that as a whole, the experience together, yes, I was, because they do the wipes and the tears of the film and everything,
the distortions
and everything, but because he wanted to hear all of his dialogue said, and all of his words said, and said by beautiful, and I'm going to say Tracy Toms is a stand-in for Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, in fact, Tarantino said that she was a female version of Samuel L. Jackson.
And she totally works, let me say that. And that made me a fan of Tracy Toms. And then I found out she's in The Wire and a bunch of other stuff, and she's great in everything she does. So just a shout out to her. And then, of course, it's Rosario Dawson, who is my second wife. So
does she know that?
Well, just as much as Rihanna knows she's my first.
She almost certainly does not.
Right.
But maybe now, if they listen, they know.
Yes, warn them.
But anyway,
ladies and gentlemen, my co-host, Stan Restraining Order Lee.
But I'm sleepy.
I can't tell if it would be better or worse to make you have a cup of coffee before we start recording this show from now on.
Worse.
what was I saying? That the lead in that
Rosario
whether it's
Dawson.
true,
Whether it's truly a grindhouse film.
as a separate film, because he still has the cuts, but he doesn't have the missing reel cards and stuff like that. So, and it's stretched out to
An absurd length.
to a length, a regular length, and there are breaks where they like repeat, and they'll repeat a scene because it gets cut in the middle of the scene, and they go back and do something. So the stuff is there, but that it's a setup.
Yeah.
In this case, because it ends up because it's structured Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and all the stuff that's added to make it exploitation film is now just part of the Tarantino experience, as opposed to the Grindhouse experience is now part of the Tarantino experience. So and when we talked about, is this really the fifth film? So in the case of it separate, yes, because it does have a straight narrative, and it doesn't have the exploitation feel to it any longer.
Okay, so we started off asking, what does Chris know about this movie? The plot of Death Proof as a standalone film is very simple and straightforward. Kurt Russell plays a character called Stuntman Mike, who murders attractive young women with his souped-up car. That's the entire conceit of the film. So, based on the fact that you're watching a movie called Grindhouse, and that prior to this, if you watched it the way you're supposed to instead of the way I watched it in the theater, you come out of Planet Terror, a very heavily Grindhouse influenced film, very bloody, very over the top, gory, and just flat out ridiculous.
And it's kept that way for the separate version of it.
There's no way you could cut that film that wouldn't be
Exactly.
ridiculous.
It's still Planet Terror remains in its international version. It remains still that exploitation. Chopsocky horror film of the 70s.
So you come out of that, and you come out of all these fake trailers, and you go into a film that you are led by the advertising to believe. And I know I said this way back when we did our rankings of how we felt about the Tarantino's filmography. This is just above The Hateful Eight on my list. It's my second least favorite of his. But you come out of all that, and you're expecting a movie about a stuntman who murders women with a souped-up car. Death Proof starts off with one group of girls who are all very attractive young women, but they're all very abrasive. They are all, in my opinion, very unlikable characters. They are all shot very overtly sexually. And we are given half the film is dedicated to these characters, and Stuntman Mike is sort of just a side character along with Rose McGowan's character. It's all building up to this one scene, and it is incredibly gory and violent, but it is Stuntman Mike killing these four girls, well, three of them, and then a friend they meet at the bar who we barely get to meet or know at all. But the point is, it builds up to this climactic scene
Kills
of
them
him
with the car.
killing them, ramming their car with his souped-up Chevy Nova. And then we get a very different second half of the film that is basically a repeat, but now with better actresses and better characters that are actually likable and relatable. And again, like you see that he is stalking these women, and it is all building up to another scene where he attempts to kill them, but this time it goes hilariously wrong for him, because what he doesn't know is that two of the women that he is going after in the second half of the film are professional stunt people.
And probably better stunt people than he is.
Yeah, and one of them, Tracy Tom's character, is a professional driver, like a precision stunt driver, leading to an amazing finale. So I say all that because I know exactly.
So you appreciate that second half.
The second half over the first, definitely. And I was reading last night about Tarantino's thought process behind the making of the film. I get why it is the way it is. There is so much dialogue and so much of these extended talking scenes because that's what a lot of these low budget films released in the 70s were.
Right.
They didn't have the budget for big action set pieces, so if they wanted to make...
I was about to say, yeah, that makes sense to me in theory, because like he said, really all these types of movies only had the budget for was that big scene, that big payoff scene.
So if you wanted to feature...
And officially, they supposedly did Grindhouse on a very shoestring for them, and being able to have a large budget. They did it, they paid for actors. That's
right.
What they did.
And that's a Robert Rodriguez specialty, because by 2007 he had his own ranch in Texas, where he had his own studio on his property. Like, if I remember correctly, he made Sin City like pretty much entirely on his own property. He has an enormous green screen in his studio that he just shot it all against, and he edited the film himself on that. On his own editing system in his own place. So yeah, for Rodriguez, that makes a lot of sense. For Death Proof, it really, I'd love to know what the budget is.
I will say I get what he's explaining. I get what he means with, because like we said, is like it really, that big payoff scene is all it has, and a lot of and someone probably making that kind of movie in the 70s, they probably would basically have double the runtime by just basically redoing the movie again.
Yes, and that leads into the second point,
right?
Which is that a lot of these low budget shoestring budget films in the 70s, they would run out of money before they were done filming. So these financiers and these studios that were supposed to release them, well, they need a sellable product. So you saw a lot of films that were not related or only tangentially related get edited together.
Yep, and I can actually point to a very specific example. Showcased on an episode of Mystery Science Theater, there's a movie called Monster A Go-Go.
Yeah.
And it is an unfinished movie that someone bought, and they just basically cobbled together a half-assed ending for it, to the point where the whole of that movie is they're supposed to be tracking this monster that's killing people. And at the end, after what I would call a glorious non-ending, everything just kind of peters out, and the narrator goes, "In the end, there was no monster."
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh yeah,
It was just a
just like you hear that, and you just have to bite your tongue not to go "fuck you."
Yeah.
But my point is like, yeah, I get what he's going for, but even just hearing that, it's like, it's one thing to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It's another thing to remake it and make people sit through it
and try to make it work.
And this is my Quentin File thing coming out because
no disrespect to him, but I will say, if a movie like that being fondly remembered today is fondly remembered for that big payoff scene, and everything else, everything else is just the small bits you can pick out of it, because
like introducing us to Vanishing Point or stuff like that, because that's one thing that he did.
Quentin Tarantino is a man who famously is in love with the movie Manos, The Hands of Fate.
Yes.
One of the worst movies of all time, made on a bet by a fertilizer salesman.
True that.
Well, and that's why the two halves of the film feel so different. My wife Katie and I watched it last night, and when we were done, she was talking about the fact that the first group of girls that we're introduced to, they are all filmed overtly sexually. Like the first time that we are introduced to Jungle Julia, played by Sidney Poitier, not that Sidney Poitier,
but
his daughter, Sidney Poitier. It is from below, looking up as she walks down the hallway in a pair of panties and a tank top. And then later, her friend Butterfly, I see several very lovingly done shots of her ass in front of a jukebox as she is picking a song. We get a lot of Tarantino shots of their feet. Like at one point, Jungle Julia is hanging her feet off of the banister at the bar they're at while it's raining. A lot of pans up her legs. Yeah.
Rosario's feet.
And this is also the half of the film where we get the most distortion and the cuts, and where very obviously they tried to put 2 takes together, but the editor didn't do it right. So we get a shot where somebody starts the line, and then we cut to a different angle, and they are starting the exact same line over again.
So in a way, this movie is basically him putting the original and the remake of an idea in the one movie.
Basically, because by the time we get to the second group of girls with Tracy Toms and Zoe Bell and Rosario Dawson, it is shot very differently. The lighting is different because this one is set primarily during the day. The filmmaking style is almost completely different.
Color in the costumes.
Yeah, the costumes, the color grading, the dialogue between the women is very different, and we actually care about this group. Now, this is a matter of opinion, because it sounds to me, Stan, like you did care for the ladies in the first half of the film.
I think you have to, because that's what makes that middle section or the climax of the first half important. I do.
Right.
I do. And I think yes, it was the women were seen sexualized, but I think that's stuntman Mike's viewpoint. But the thing is, they do own their sexuality, and they're all very strong. They're not weak-willed women. They don't submit to men because it's a women's night out. They're going to the lake house as a female group. Maybe if they choose to, maybe they'll let 1 or 2 guys come with them. But it is very female-centric still, which is a step away from classic exploitation film, where it is a lot of, you have to start with the objectification before you can get to the redeeming qualities at the end of the movie when they get there. And I think that is a complete, utter setup because we have to see stuntman Mike as this formidable character, and he's formidable in that first half.
Well, right, you have to set the formula before you subvert.
Exactly, and he's the one that survives this accident because he's got a death-proof car.
Right.
And then, and we'll talk about Earl and Son in a bit, but so you have to have that set, where it's stuntman Mike's view of what he sees these women as. Because my question is was he ever really a stuntman, or has he always been a serial killer that is just used? Maybe he started as a stuntman, but was he ever really as good as he professes it as, or has he always been a serial killer that uses his car as his weapon? But so when we get to the second half, and you get now we come to, it's Zoe Bell's and Tracy Tom's point of view, and they're strong, super strong women. They're superheroes. And Rosario Dawson, who's already a superhero, but she's the makeup girl, but she turns out to be one of the strongest of the 3. And because we have
also
to have
the most
that.
Bloodthirsty.
And the most bloodthirsty. She turns out to be the most bloodthirsty. And they're not nice girl because, they say that their friend is a porn star to be able to steal the car, basically. But they get to do the Vanishing Point. They get
to play Ship's Mast.
Ship's Mast on the front of this Dodge Challenger that's classic, and so that's where the money went, by the way, just to buy that car. But
it was worth every penny.
Worth every penny, and they had to buy 3 or 4 because they did a lot of smashing that. They couldn't have done that in one take, I don't think. But so they had to set all that up in the beginning of his formidability. So when we get to see him at his weakest point, you're actually almost wanting to feel for stuntman Mike because he's getting the ass. But the thing is that our focus is
Had
on
we-
the women. Say no, they're going to kick your motherfucking ass.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. Had we not gotten that first half of the film and seeing how merciless and cruel Stuntman Mike could be,
Because he says it when he kills Roten McGowan's character,
Pam. Yeah.
Pam. He's like, you're going to have to get frightened immediately.
Yeah. It might be his best line delivery in the film. So the setup for this is these unlikable girls that the first group, unlikable depending on your perspective, but it's a pretty simple setup. They're going to a bar to get drunk and hang out with some guys where they all go to their house, to go to a lake house for the weekend. The second group of girls, Zoe Bell plays herself. New Zealand, not Australian.
Kiwi.
Yes, the New Zealand actress Zoe Bell.
Yeah, they don't like you confusing that.
No, and in fact, they bring that up in the film.
They do a joke about it.
She has come to America to hang out with this group of girls, and she has found somebody in Tennessee that is selling a 1970 white Dodge Challenger, exactly like the one in the film Vanishing Point. So they go to this place where the guy is selling the Challenger, and they talk him into letting them test drive it by leaving their other friend Lee, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. They essentially abandoned her with this guy after telling him. Yeah, no, we never find out. They leave her there with him after lying to him and telling him that she's a porn star and that they're all in town making a porno. And then they leave her with this redneck in the middle of nowhere and proceed to go on this huge chase scene and fuck up this Challenger.
I choose to believe after they left, a very nice romantic movie happened.
Yeah, that'd be a nice subversion. Okay, but all of that is... So the prompt was, does this succeed as a Grindhouse film? Stan, you think it does. I don't, either as part of Grindhouse as a whole or a standalone. He tried very hard to make this a Grindhouse-esque film. It had all of the right elements, but I just don't think it succeeded, especially if you compare it to the first half, Planet Terror.
So what you're saying was Rodriguez got the spirit of it down, but
Tarantino had already done a lot.
Tarantino kind of locked down the technical side, but
Yeah.
not so much the spirit.
Yes, exactly.
I'll agree with that wholeheartedly, is because I think Robert Rodriguez has been playing that Grindhouse style through all of his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Even his high budget stuff, I think, is still.
Well, I don't think that
Grindhouse
Spy Kids was probably very Grindhouse.
Have
but
you
it would
seen them?
It would have been. It would have
I
been.
haven't.
Well, Machete's a character in it.
That's
yeah.
true. I had heard
Yeah.
that.
And you're not even thinking about Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
That's true. But at any point in the Spy Kids films, does Danny Trejo's character cut open a person's stomach, grab their intestines, and use them to fast rope down the side of a building?
I think there's an
that might have been in
analog to
the
it, but just not
adult
exactly
version
that.
of it, the mature rated version of it. But anyway,
No, but Steve Buscemi's scientist character creates giant thumb men.
he does.
People who just have thumbs for heads.
And that's what I'm saying, is that Robert Rodriguez has always done the, let's throw in this weird thing. Let's throw in this weird thing. And also let's cast all my friends. It's like he doesn't really do a casting, situation. Right. He doesn't have a casting director. He says, okay, we're going to make a movie tonight. And it's like, and then everybody comes and shows up.
God
and they
damn
drink
it, Robert.
beer
You said this was a dinner party.
Exactly. But Tarantino had, with the exception of maybe Reservoir Dogs, and maybe even with that, because he had already written and sold screenplays, but he's gotten to do, straight up budgeted, paid for,
Yeah. Kill Bill Volume 1 is much more of a Grindhouse film.
And
I'd go so far as to say Jackie Brown is probably more of a Grindhouse film.
It's definitely blaxploitation.
Yeah.
And yes, but I think that's where and I think this, for me, for Death Proof, is that it's like the middle section of his genre period, where he was going to commit to allowing us to experience the genres that influenced him. And so it's like, yeah, he did his usual, he borrowed his stuff, and then he threw his Tarantino stuff, which would be the second half of Death Proof, and it's like, no, women are awesome, and they're going to kick Kurt Russell's fucking ass. It's like, so he throws the twist on it. I think Jackie Brown was a nice introduction to that. It's like, so we got introduced to Across 110th Street and all those early 70s films. Mario Peoples' father. I think it is Mario. But anyway, that whole section, and then I think Kill Bill was another introduction to his love of going to
Genre.
to see movies on Saturday afternoon, see kung fu movies, and then I think Death Proof, when he's talking to Robert Rodriguez, said we're gonna commit, we're gonna make a Grindhouse collection. And the thing, and I think he knows that Robert Rodriguez is that Tarantino was allowed, knowing that he had the ability, he was allowed the grouping of Grindhouse to be made. He knew Robert Rodriguez would have the real Grindhouse film in it, and because that's what Robert Rodriguez makes, and so it's like that's why I think it's that. And it's like I don't know if Tarantino's ever really been able to allow himself to make a straight up Grindhouse film.
Let's pause here for a moment. Are you still having trouble hearing yourself?
No, I hear myself.
Okay, because I was about to say, you're wearing your headphones backwards.
Am I? Is that why?
Yes. You've been wearing your headphones backwards this entire time.
This is awesome.
Holy shit.
I'm sleepy. Oh, wow, I heard that.
Oh, my God.
Holy fuck.
Would that
Mystery
work?
solved.
Would that be the issue for real? They're the
Just
same
call
thing,
me
right?
Detective
Does it
Headphones.
have to be right and right and left
No,
and
because
left?
the way that you're wearing them
way
the
I-
correct way,
The way the speakers face into your ears allow you to hear yourself.
you had the speaker portion of the earbud facing the back of your. Oh my God.
Also,
You had the
what I take
earbuds,
most
bud.
out of that revelation is the fact that Dave had stopped listening so hard that he just started staring at Stan's ears.
No, I didn't maliciously stop listening.
No,
I stopped listening because I was looking at the headphones and I was like,
Your eyes crossed and you saw the.
holy shit, he's wearing those backwards. That's why you couldn't hear. Jesus Christ. All right.
Someone
so
flipped this.
you are. So I think
Maybe a little dopey.
a little bit. I'm usually grumpy.
Sloppy.
He's hardly
I'm all-
bashful.
And no, he's
I
never
am very
bashful.
bashful, thank you very much.
Shut it, Doc.
I'm all 8 dwarves.
How many?
And they're 7.
All right, let's try to get this train back on
Oh,
track
boy.
because I think
Math
we've
is
already basically discussed this next topic a little bit. But the next one is, does this really count as Tarantino's 5th film?
Yes.
I have a little bit of contention with that. I think after the fact, once it was released on its own, it became Tarantino's 5th film. But I think as part of a whole, it doesn't really count to me.
No, it counts to me because I see it as as part of the Grindhouse thing. It's a collaboration, and then the fact that he already had made a whole movie and then cut
Yeah.
it down
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
And it's like I think if there had been maybe one more person as part of it, then maybe I could say, oh, maybe it's just like an anthology.
Yeah, and it's like, that's why I'm thinking, that's why he doesn't consider his part of 4 Rooms,
Right.
because it's not
Yeah.
a feature and because it was part of a grouping of stuff representative of this one
But
single
he's 50% of Grindhouse, so I'd count
and
it.
he is 50%
Yeah,
of
okay,
and it's
all right.
2 separate.
The numbers don't lie. And
It's
they
not
spell
one
disaster
long
for
movie.
Samoa Joe.
It's 2 separate drive-in features. So-
All right. You convinced me, you jackals. All right, so
See how effective Stan is when he can hear what he's talking
I
about?
know. It's amazing.
God damn, I'm an idiot.
So
Someone
last
cut
but
that.
not least, we're going to discuss the Tarantino-verse connections to the other films. So as I described in prior episodes, Tarantino has 2 separate universes. There is his real-world films like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction or Jackie Brown will be considered part of. And then he has what he considers his realer-than-real films, or the realer-than-real universe, of which Kill Bill is a part of, From Dusk Till Dawn is a part of. And never is that more obvious than here, because returning again as Sheriff Earl McGraw is the wonderful Michael Parks. for the now I guess the fourth time technically because the character is also in Planet Terror.
Yeah.
And so him and son number 1 are in there, both of whom appear in Kill Bill. They're the sheriffs on the scene when they find the bride and her wedding party murdered. At the beginning of Kill Bill Volume 1 is when we're shown them finding them. But then there's what I call the Daryl Hannah conundrum. Because if Sheriff Earl McGraw exists in both Death Proof and Kill Bill, and it is the same character, but Daryl Hannah, the actress, plays Elle Driver in the Kill Bill films, then how in Death Proof is one of the second group of girls' friend the stand-in for Daryl Hannah? Because when they pick up Zoe Bell and they're driving to their destination, they are describing what everyone on set does. Rosario Dawson's character is a makeup artist. Tracy Thoms' character is a stunt coordinator. Zoe Bell, of course, is a stunt woman. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is an actress. And they mention something about Daryl Hannah's stand-in. Oh, that Rosario Dawson's boyfriend, the director, fucked Daryl Hannah's stand-in. So, do you see where I'm going with this? Am I floundering here?
I'm not sure it's much of a conundrum.
No, really. It can be. Daryl Hannah exists in the universes as an actress.
And then Elle Driver is a separate entity.
Who just looks a whole lot like Daryl Hannah?
Well, no, I mean, maybe she doesn't to everyone else living in that world.
And
so we're talking about a Last Action Hero scenario
possibly,
here.
yeah.
Possibly that. And if you think about it, the space between seeing as an American audience, the last time we saw Daryl Hannah before Kill Bill was quite a while, and she did not look the same in Kill Bill movies as she would have done in Splash or anything like that.
Maybe.
So the idea of Elle Driver, and then they are making a kind of a exploitation film that they're talking about there in I guess it's New Zealand, right? So they're making the movie, or no, they're making the movie in Lebanon, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, and it's an exploitation film. So maybe she was the original. She was supposed to be Uma Thurman, or she was supposed to be the bride, and she got recast, and maybe that
or
because
maybe what we're seeing
she
is
fucked.
the dramatization of real events from that world.
Okay.
Because
by this point in time, somebody has made
possibly
ripped from the headline story of the bride and her bloody revenge across the world.
Yeah, no one remarks that any of the guys from Reservoir Dogs look like the actors that play them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
It was one of those things that made me go cross-eyed last night when I was watching it.
No, I understand.
Somebody said, and had we not just watched both Kill Bills and had a very long discussion about them, I probably would not have given it a second thought. But we had just seen Sheriff Earl McGraw.
Yeah.
And then we get the mention of Daryl Hannah's stand-in, and I was like, but wait, but they're...
If
Earl
McGraw had mentioned something about Daryl Hannah, that would have probably been closer to the conundrum. But because it was a totally and because Zoe Bell was Uma Thurman's stand-in, she probably did some of Daryl Hannah's stunts as well in Kill Bill. There's a nice connection that can be connected to. Mm-hmm. But if it had been Earl McGraw's character or Earl McGraw, Michael Parks' character,
yes.
Earl McGraw, the sheriff, talking about Daryl Hannah, and that we just saw somebody that looked like her, but I guess he wouldn't have known about the five
he's a
Venoms.
small town Texas sheriff,
right? So he wouldn't have known about the killers, but he doesn't mention that. So does that mean Kill Bill is after?
So that is the perfect segue.
Or
Thank
before?
You. So the existence of this character across all four films leads to a very interesting chronology.
Another conundrum.
Yes. So
the other conundrum, because I like calling that the first one the conundrum.
So he appears in order of release in From Dusk Till Dawn, Kill Bill, Planet Terror, Death Proof. But chronologically, in this realer than real universe that Sheriff Earl McGraw exists in, it would be all the 4 years earlier segments of Kill Bill when he and son number 1 find her seemingly dead body and the rest of the dead wedding party. That is chronologically first, followed by the Texas portion of Death Proof, leading up to him and his son discussing Stuntman Mike's motivation.
Right.
Then the entirety of Planet Terror.
This is where I might.
And then From Dusk Till Dawn, because he is murdered at the beginning of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yes.
And chronologically, Planet Terror takes place after Death Proof because there is a message. You hear something on the radio about the unfortunate passing of Jungle Julia.
Right.
So this guy...
But how do you explain away him totally being freaked out by, had he already dealt, because Planet Terror is
I want to go to Planet Terror.
is apocalyptic zombie stuff,
Yes.
right?
So they
how is that not, doesn't set him up for the vampires of From Dusk Till Dawn? He doesn't.
Well, the poor guy didn't live to see them.
Yes.
Because this son of a bitch, one day he's discovering the dead body of a woman in a wedding dress.
Right.
Then he's discovering the bodies of 4 women on the highway. Then he's caught up in a man-made zombie apocalypse that he apparently survives, only to be shot in the back of the head by Richie Gecko in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Is this why he's totally not surprised by getting shot by Gecko?
He's shot in the back of the head.
But
Anyone's not going to be surprised.
But the thing is, he sees everything in the same mode. You know, he's not shocked by what's happening. It does
explain why he's buying a bottle of wild turkey at 9 o'clock in the morning at the beginning of From Dusk Till Dawn.
But the thing is, then we have to recognize the fact that the world almost ended previous. It's like, why don't George Clooney and Quentin talk about the previous ending of the world before he busted Quentin out of jail? The Gecko brothers connecting, and because they would know about, because doesn't that happen in Texas as well?
Maybe it's more isolated.
Planet Terror in Texas is in Austin, right? It takes place in Austin, so it's like
maybe it's more isolated than it's led on to be. I haven't seen it, so I have no clue.
But
government
From Dusk
covered
Till
it
Dawn,
up.
yes, that's probably because it
was Marsh Papers,
and they probably covered up the vampires and the titty twister. You know, it's like, so in that case maybe. But the thing is like when there have been acknowledgement that the world basically ended and everybody was a zombie.
You'd think so. That's what I'm saying.
And it's like, who was left for the geckos to kidnap?
Okay. Well, Harvey Keitel and his family, and the guy who owns the bar.
But when they have been zombies as well.
And Seth and Richie Gecko.
Right, that's what
and presumably all of the occupants of the Titty Twister in Mexico.
Because they were already vampires, so they could have been zombies.
So who gives a fuck about zombies? They just hunkered down and let Rosario Dawson and her machine gun leg.
They were actually were-snakes, if you think about it.
Shut up.
So.
All right.
Because they were actually, it was snake blood that turned them into what they were.
That's enough of that.
They were snakes.
No.
If you think about it, that was the whole.
I refuse to think about this.
What's her face does and Salma Hayek does and stuff is the whole snake dance, and that's what they're more were snakes, and they can change into like werewolves, changing into wolves. They can change into snakes. They change into.
Well,
snakes.
Traditionally, vampires can turn into a lot of things. They can turn into wolves.
They're bats.
They can turn into bats.
They have the whole bat sequence, so yeah, they're probably vampires. But the idea that there were snakes is much more interesting because vampires are the most boring of the monster lore. So,
what a fucking rabbit hole that was. All I can say
but
is,
just meant were snake. It's not a great word.
Rest in peace,
So here are the things that Stan is now banned from saying for a while. Were-snake as a whole, and whatever else he repeated 7 times tonight.
Yeah, I can't. I've already
As a
blocked
whole, why
it.
as a whole?
Shut up. You used that phrase like 20 times.
All I'm saying is
I'm
rest
waking up.
Rest in peace, Sheriff Earl McGraw,
True
and
that.
also rest in peace, Michael Parks.
For real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have to give it up for Tarantino to create that character. Mm-hmm. It is, even though it's a small role, but that character is one of the great written characters of all time.
I just like that. Time. Yeah, I think the entire point that supersedes chronology. Just hearing this is. He's just the poor bastard who has to stumble across the aftermath of every one of these
fucked up shit.
Yeah, every one of these terrible situations.
I agree.
Basically. So,
but I do love that character. I think it was a perfect role for Michael Parks because I don't really know Michael Parks from anything, but he is that.
Yeah,
he is Earl McGraw, and hats off and. R.I.P. definitely.
All right, so I'm gonna send us off on a fan theory that Katie came up with last night while watching Death Proof.
Before we get into that, I have a question. Wasn't Hobo with a Shotgun part of all this? Or was that something different?
I thought that was one of the.
Hobo with a Shotgun started as a fan trailer made,
so it was
inspired by.
Okay.
And then
it became a whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, and then Machete happened, and then somebody actually produced Hobo with a Shotgun for the creative team that made the trailer.
Gotcha.
And if I am remembering correctly, this came out 13 years ago. Yeah. But if I'm remembering this correctly, I want to say that the Hobo with a Shotgun trailer was so popular when it was released online that I feel like it did get attached to later prints of Grindhouse.
I thought it had, because I had the same reactions. Hobo with a Shotgun is an actual movie, and I remember it as a fake trailer.
Yeah,
and, same with Machete. It's like, but Machete had always been planned, but Hobo with a Shotgun came out as a big surprise. And
no, Hobo with a Shotgun was not initially released as part of Grindhouse, and it's not included on the DVD. But if I'm remembering correctly, I think it got attached to later prints of Grindhouse,
and that truly is a Grindhouse movie.
Oh yeah, it is more of a Grindhouse film than either of the films in the movie Grindhouse.
And if you haven't seen Hobo, see it. It's wonderful.
Okay, but that comes with an addendum in that it is not for anyone with a weak stomach.
True that.
Yeah.
True that.
I will say, just hearing after discussing this for so long, I have to say it was a noble effort, but it seems like this Grindhouse project was poorly managed when you think about it, because both of the films ended up missing reels when they showed them. That's just irresponsible.
It really is. It was.
But a serious final comment. I think it was a really good effort by Tarantino, but really he didn't have to do this so much, because honestly, when you think about it, especially because of how he made his movies are basically a tribute to Grindhouse, in that they are what the Grindhouse people wanted to be making.
Yes, absolutely.
If they could have, they would have been making what Quentin Tarantino put out.
Yeah, and thank you, because I had another quote here that I was going to read before we wrapped up, and then I'm going to do the fan theory. Mm-hmm. So, going back to this interview from Cannes in 2007, they're asked this. Tarantino specifically is asked, the cinema of the 1970s is something of an artistic inspiration for you. You've done blaxploitation, action movies, and martial arts. What was your inspiration this time around? Tarantino says 2 things. My starting off point was that I wanted to do a slasher film. I thought that fit in really well with the whole idea, but when I started thinking about the slasher film, that genre is so rigid. I thought if I did that, it'd be too self-reflective and the audience would be too outside of the experience. But I still kind of liked that genre, so I tried to do a completely different thing and use the structure of a slasher. People are asking me, is this a revenge film or is this a feminist film? Because the film empowers women, and that's not like the exploitation movies you took this from. And I say, that's not 100% correct. Actually, exploitation movies dealt with female empowerment in violent genres in ways that Hollywood never did. Right. You just brought up blaxploitation, and there was no A-list white Hollywood equivalent of Pam Grier in the 1970s. She stood alone. There was an equivalent in Japan, there was in Hong Kong, and there was in the last act of every slasher film. There's always a final girl that stands up and has the moral fortitude to beat the boogeyman. That's always been the staple of that genre, and here there isn't one final girl, it's 3, and they all play it chipperly, but it still follows the basic rules of the genre.
Yep.
And yeah, it's interesting what he said about the slasher movies is because, I mean, honestly, it makes sense for him to not ultimately not go that way because putting it in the 70s, he would be more of what would be the proto or genesis of like a slasher movie.
Right.
Because those really didn't take shape until the 80s.
Yep. So the final note is my wife Katie's fan theory while watching this film, which is that Brad Pitt's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Cliff Booth, grew up to become Stuntman Mike.
Do you...
It's a fun theory.
I would say he grew up to be one of Stuntman. He was probably the one that replaced Stuntman Mike because I think Cliff Booth would grow up to be a great person. He killed Charles Manson's family, for God's sake. He was a good guy where Stuntman Mike was something happened to him that made him break and become an evil person. It's like Cliff Booth, everything for him was, how do I help what's his face? You know, it's like, how do I, and then when it got to the end of that movie, it was all, how do I fuck these motherfuckers up because they're very, very, very bad people and I'm going to fuck the bad out of them. And he does, you know, and it's like,
I'm going to fuck the bad out of them.
We need to save that line for later.
We're going to put that on your tombstone.
He would have killed Stuntman Mike.
Probably. We didn't, we've had all of this theory talk. We haven't discussed the actual ending of the film, which sees a literal Chekhov's gun established in the pistol that Tracy Thomp's character has in an ankle holster that she is carrying when Stuntman Mike starts chasing them and ramming into them and eventually rams them off the road.
And his second best line.
Which one?
Ladies, that was fun.
Yeah. He runs them off the road. He pops out of his car to taunt them. And as he is talking shit, suddenly he gets shot in the arm because Tracy Thomp's character busted out that gun and starts shooting at him. And up until this point, he is treated very much like the killer in a traditional slasher film. He stalks, he murders, he moves on to his next set of victims. Here he just starts crying, gets back in his car, and speeds off, sobbing and whining and screaming.
That's what I'm saying.
And asking why.
The first part.
Right. It's so satisfying to watch him completely break down. And
then he thinks he gets away, and they're still, and they want to fuck him up. They literally want to go fuck him up. And that's what they say. It's like, there's no discussion about it. It's like, do you want to go kill this motherfucker? Yes, I do.
So they chase him down and eventually crash him, beat the shit out of him. And
hand to hand, in a circle.
Oh, yeah.
One punches, the other punches.
Yeah.
One punch. It's great.
And then Rosario Dawson's character scissor kicks his face in
during the credits.
Yes, it's a wonderful chase sequence. The film, realistically, in my opinion, needed to be a half hour shorter so that we got to that climax faster.
I do like hearing that though. It's a nice rehumanization of the slasher. It's like because of franchises and everything. You know, because in Jason and Michael Myers, they get elevated up to superhuman boogeyman. And in this one, when it's still like he's still very much a human.
Because if he can't put them in that crash, the crash box in his car, he's worthless.
Yeah,
he's got to.
Well, she also
or run his car into another car and survive it because he's in the death proof part of it. It's like. He's vulnerable if you're not in that crash box.
Well, and it's also brilliant because where she shoots him is his left arm, which is the worst place you can get fucking shot as a stunt driver
right.
because he's driving a manual transmission.
Right.
Yeah. If you watch nothing else, watch the climax of that movie.
And I do have to say, you can watch for both those cars, both both the Death Proof car, Stuntman Mike's car is brilliant, and then
both of them.
The Vanishing Point
So,
car is wonderful.
The one he uses to kill the first girl is a Chevy Nova. The second group of girls, it's a Dodge Face-Off because he's driving a 69 Dodge Charger and they're in a 70 Dodge Challenger. So it's two classic Dodge muscle cars going head to head. And spoiler
really
alert, the Challenger wins.
Oh man,
it's all the discussion about what they bring up repeatedly, all the car movies that they love, like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and Vanishing Point. I do give Death Proof a lot of shit, and I don't enjoy it as much as his other films. But I can thank it for the fact that this film led me to seeing those. I love Vanishing Point. It is a bright spot among the world's most narrowly specific subgenre of film, which I call the existentialist car culture subgenre.
They even bring up the original Gone in 60 Seconds and everything.
Not that Nicolas Cage or not that Angelina Jolie bullshit. But yeah, that's why a 1970 Dodge Challenger is my dream car. And just to see
Tracy Toms and Zoe Bell realistically play female gearheads, that was beautiful. And I would assume that Zoe Bell probably is, because I'm sure she wants to do, and she got to do it. She wants to do the ship's mast.
And by the way, I'm sure it comes as no surprise, but she did all those stunts on the hood of the car herself.
Yeah.
So that is the discussion of the movie Death Proof, Quentin Tarantino's fifth film,
I was just going to say, going back to Katie's theory, I mean, I wouldn't, maybe they're not the same person, but maybe they end up being related, like Tarantino likes to do.
That
with
would be interesting because Kurt Russell and Zoe Bell play a married couple who are stunt coordinators in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes.
But so we're at this point now more than halfway through his filmography.
And I have to go back. I do have to say, because rankings, this isn't in my top echelon of Tarantino films as a love for me. I do like it a lot. I think I think this is part of a group. If we grouped sections of Tarantino's filmography together, I think this would be in the genre section of his filmography and be up there. It's probably in my bottom half, definitely. Maybe not. Well, I guess it would be as far down as yours, but which we'll talk about later when we get to Hateful Eight. But the idea that I don't hate it as much as you do, but it's not in my upper echelon. It's not a Kill Bill for me. It's not It's not a Once Upon a Time or anything like that. So.
Well, what's interesting is watching all of these films again. Some of them have sort of changed places, and it's going to be interesting in December to look at where they all fall on my new list, my new ranking of his films. Because Kill Bill as a whole is going to be a lot higher on the list than it initially was.
I agree.
This is the only one so far that has really not... Well, but Pulp Fiction was always going to be my number one anyway, but Death Proof, watching it again, did not change my estimation of the film any.
Agreed.
I still love the last third. I love that car chase, but the rest of it is still a slog to get through. I'm very interested to see if my opinion is going to change at all when I watch the Netflix version of The Hateful Eight.
No.
Probably not. But so if you've been keeping up...
Watch the DVD release of it, or the Blu-ray release of it.
Yeah.
The cut.
No, I've seen that. I want to see the way it's released for Netflix.
Which is what...
It's the 4-hour version.
Yeah, which is what we saw.
No.
So it's not not in the road?
No, it's not the Roadshow version that we saw. It's the Netflix version includes...
Well, then I needs to see this then.
Yeah.
I needs to see this.
It's released on Netflix in 4 1-hour parts.
Yeah.
But if you've been keeping up with our Quentin Tarantino coverage, then next month in October, we're going to be discussing Inglourious Bastards. And then in November, we're going to be doing a double feature of Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight. And then we're going to be wrapping it all up in December by discussing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So with that said, this episode is coming out tonight, the Friday the 25th. We got a pay-per-view coming up from the WWE on Sunday. Do you remember what that one is, Chris?
Clash of Champions.
Clash of Champions is coming up on this Sunday, the 27th.
Oh boy, Retribution made their in-ring debut.
Oh boy, I don't know what that means, but we'll find out.
You know,
very
the
wholehearted.
the group that was all clad in black and just causing havoc.
No, I don't.
Oh, it was in a promo package. I don't know if you saw it.
Probably not.
Yeah, my prediction came true. Once the main members hit the ring, they were magically way bigger.
Yeah, shocking. So you got that episode to look forward to coming out next week on This Is a Work, and we've got a couple of NXT TakeOver pay-per-views coming in October, I believe, so you can be on the lookout for those, hosted by the recently married Shelby Ray Patterson. So congratulations to the host of This Is a Takeover, Shelby Ray Patterson. So thank you very much for listening to the show. If you enjoy this or any of our sister shows, please make sure to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on. I don't think any of us really care to say what social media you can follow us on right now. But if you are any of our international listeners...
David's trying to give me Instagram, but I'm refusing.
If you are one of our international listeners, we would love to hear from you. Anyone outside of the United States or North America.
Especially about Death Proof, because since it was better. It was
No, I'm good.
It was
I'm good.
But it was received better internationally than it was here. So.
I don't know, but reach out to us. Just not about Death Proof. Email me, David.Longwalk, LONGWALK @gmail.com. So thank you very much for listening to Long Walk Talks.
Peace out.
You could suddenly say echelon, but you couldn't say terror like 10 minutes ago.